Rex, you mentioned Mickey Harrison. There's a lot of opposite examples out there. If you're starting a hall of shame for world's worst sports owners.
No, let's do this another way. Let's do it top five
Okay, right.
worst
Okay.
owners of all time or right now. What do you want to do? Do you want to do top
I gotta
five?
Go all time.
Okay,
All time.
all time.
This is
Wow, this is
exciting.
very
Hold on, I gotta
exciting.
write this down,
This
Rex.
is
Hold
very
on.
exciting. Let's all write this down. We got to get our pens here. Get the fanfare. Get the highest quality production that we have back there to get Rex Chapman's top 5 worst owners ever. The podcast is owned with Rex Chapman. Number 5, Rex.
Number 5 is George Shinn.
That's a good one. That is good.
George Shinn, extremely cheap owner, drafted me. That was his first mistake, I suppose. Drafted me 8th overall to handle Michael Jordan in the East as a 2-guard. And I'll tell you how that worked out. Michael Jordan ended up owning the Hornets.
You got your revenge, though, Rex.
Yeah. But George Shinn, extremely cheap, eventually sort of ran the thing into the ground, had to sell the team, move the team to New Orleans, and then had to sell. It was a disaster.
Number 4.
Number 4, Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz bought the Seattle Supersonics in the early 2000s, held on to it for a couple of years. He bought it for like $200 million, sold it for like $350 million. It's just a bad business deal. And the team moved to OKC, a team deserves to be in Seattle, but he sold the team and made like $150 million. If he'd have held the team for 10 years, he makes $1 billion. If he held on to it for 20 years, he makes $3 or $4 billion. Bad business.
That's the Starbucks guy, right?
Starbucks, yeah.
Number 3.
Marge Schott.
Wow.
You got 2 worse than that. All right, good luck.
Marge Schott. I was a teenager in the 80s growing up in Kentucky, and the Reds were the closest team to us. She did do one thing that sort of endeared herself to the fans, which was she kept season ticket prices very low, like maybe the lowest in the league. The problem was she was incredibly cheap, but on top of that, she also had random Nazi memorabilia laying around her house. I mean, what are we talking about? They constantly asked her to do sensitivity training. She was constantly saying, uttering racial epithets. Just a miserable owner.
Shouldn't be laughing.
Number 2.
Number 2, Dan Snyder.
Oh, I have seen such good stats.
Dan
on
Snyder. You know, having played in Washington for the Bullets way back in the day, we weren't very good. The Redskins were pretty damn good. And the one thing about the Redskins during that time is the fan base loved the team, loved the group, loved the whole vibe of things. Dan Snyder bought the team, and really, from all the stuff in the front office, the sexual harassment, the covering up of everything, and the fact that he was forced out. I mean, come on, you can't do a worse job.
Well, not just forced out, but forced out with something I haven't seen before, which is you're leaving. We're taking $60 million as you go, even though you're selling for $6 billion. Here's a fine at the very end. You can't do anything about it because you're awful. But what is, Stugotz, the better stat for pointing out his incompetence? Is it that in 24 years, they had 2 All-Pros, 2, 1 a special teamer and 1 last year? Wow. Or is it that they had as many division titles as federal investigations?
Number 2.
Number 1, Rex Chapman, the worst owner ever is?
Absolutely, Donald Sterling. Donald Sterling, owner of the Clippers from the time I entered the league in the 80s. It was widely known that he was arguably the worst, cheapest owner in the league at that point. Constantly in the lottery, drafting guys like Danny Manning and Gary Grant and Loy Vaught and really good players, letting them finish out their rookie deals when they had become really good players, some of them all-stars, and never re-signing those guys, just letting them walk. Just a bad owner, didn't care about winning, didn't care about the fans, and then all the racial stuff. Come on, bottom of the barrel.
Rex, before we get
got
you
AIDS.
before we get you out of here,
That's
the
a
new
good list,
the new
man.
podcast is called Own. Congratulations to James Dolan for somehow sneaking out
Wow.
without getting in
Oh, well,
in the top 5.